Oh, hey, let's do a shed review. What's up guys, Sergio here, back with another video, and today it's going to be a slightly different review. Today we're going to be reviewing the shed because it's something that I put together recently. I usually do food reviews and fitness related stuff, but I figured that this was such a big task that I figured that it would be helpful to review if anybody else gets it. I've done some other non-food reviews before, like I've done like the KidCraft playset review. So this is my second non-food review, I think. But anyway, let's hop into it. So what we have here is the Lifetime shed. So it's like a plastic or a resin shed. This is approximately, I think, 8.5 by 12 feet. So it still comes up to 100 square feet, but it's more of like a rectangle. So I decided to go this route rather than the wood route, just because it would be slightly easier, and even though it's not going to be as sturdy, I figured it'd be a little bit easier than putting together an all wood shed. So it just kind of depends on what your goals are, and I'm just trying to store some stuff to kind of clear out my garage, so I don't have like a bunch of like tools and things like that in there. So I decided to go with the resin shed, but like I said, to each his own, but this is kind of what I figured, and price wise it wound up being a little bit cheaper going this route. So anyway, we have the shed here. I'll have some b-roll footage of kind of like what the shed looks like on the outside. I just kind of wanted to give my opinion on in my experience as far as building it, and then how I feel about it. It's probably been about a month, almost a month now, since it's been completed. The build itself wasn't that bad, but I think what's important for people to know is that there's two parts to building the shed. There's the foundation, and then there's also the shed itself. So the shed itself, honestly, is pretty straightforward. Like, there's directions for it, and I'll get into how I feel about directions later, but there's directions for that. But as far as the foundation, there's not a whole lot of direction with that. Like, they do tell you, what supplies you need if you're gonna well, let me back up. You can either do two types of foundation, what they recommend, either concrete or a wooden one. So they say concrete is best, but then second would be a wood one. I really think that there's not a huge difference between the two. It just depends on what you want to do as far as what you feel comfortable with as far as experience. So you could do a concrete one, and just either lay the concrete yourself or have somebody do that for you, and then you would build the foundation off of that, or you can do a wooden one. So I went with wood because I just have more experience with that. But some things to note before that, so you know what you're getting into. Obviously, it doesn't come with the wood. It just comes just with the shed. So you're gonna have to purchase all that additional wood. But like I said, you'll still have to spend money even with concrete, because you have to pay for that too. On top of that, you're gonna need some tools as well, especially if you don't have those already when it comes to building a foundation. So things like a circular saw, drills like an impact driver, level, things like that. So those are some things you want to take in consideration before you buy the shed, because the shed absolutely needs to be on a foundation. You can't just put it flat on the grass. There's plenty of videos on YouTube of people building sheds. Some people will just use a bunch of gravel and just make sure that the gravel is level and build a shed on top of that. But I think whatever you decide, it needs to be on a solid foundation. So I went with the wood. So this basically consists of a bunch of 2x4s and like 3/4 inch pieces of plywood. I also used deck blocks because that helped to like really level the foundation. So I had essentially had to dig 4 holes, put some gravel in that, make sure it is level, put the deck block in there, and then put the 2x4s on top and make sure everything's level. So you definitely want everything to be level, because in the end, if it's not level, you can have a lopsided shelf. Shed, not shelf. So that was probably the most work, because like I said, they give you like a little help as far as like how big your frame needs to be, and like what size you need to cut the wood down to. But it's still, you gotta kind of have a decent understanding of just working with lumber and stuff like that. So it's all treated lumber. Once again, like I said, you definitely want to have some type of foundation. I don't even recommend even putting the lumber in the grass, because I don't think that's a good idea, because even if it's treated, I just feel like over time that wood is just going to go bad. So you want to have either deck blocks, gravel, pavers, something to put that wood on top of and just make sure that's level. So that was probably the hardest part. Also, some things you might want to consider is because it's going to be elevated off the ground, you're going to want to have like chicken wire, so you can just prevent, rodents and small critters, from getting, underneath your shed. So like I have chicken wire that is stapled onto the wood, and then that's kind of like buried into the dirt a little bit so that nothing can get underneath the shed. So a lot of work involved with the foundation. Like I said, I think that's almost more work or more brain power than the shed itself. But if you spend time on that, it's going to make your shed all the more solid. So moving on to the actual build. Sorry, I hear a bunch of noise. I'm in my shed. But moving on to the actual build with the shed. It was actually pretty straightforward. The directions are not too bad. I mean, it is like plastic reinforced with metal. Like as you can see, like the trusses and stuff like this is metal, and like there's metal like every quarter panel. Like there's like metal that is kind of that will connect into the plastic. But when you get the shed, it comes in like 3 boxes essentially. Or maybe 2, but it's just like a bunch of just sheets of plastic essentially, and you just gotta put it together. So the directions are really good for the most part. What I didn't like is some of the pictures could be illustrated a little bit better. The descriptions were pretty straightforward. Sometimes I wish maybe they were a little bit more descriptive when it came to putting stuff together. But the one thing that saves lifetime is the fact that there's a video that gives you like a step-by-step how to put every single piece together. So without the video, I think this would have been a lot more frustrating as far as putting it together, but the video really helps. So I really, that really made things easy for me. I would give the directions probably like a 3 out of 5 as far as like with 1 being easy to read and 5 being difficult. I'll put it at a 3 just because, like I said, it could have been more descriptive. There's a couple parts I got hung up on and I had to kind of watch the video over and over because just the description wasn't good enough for me to figure out what I needed to do. The other thing I would say is like I assembled this shed completely by myself, which makes things a lot harder. I would recommend at least 2 people. Things will go a lot faster. Having a second set of eyes will help you so that you don't overlook a step or you're not second guessing yourself. So definitely 2 people would be recommended, especially when hanging the doors. It actually says in directions you need 3 people, and I did that by myself. Don't recommend that. That was very stressful and frustrating. But as far as like the shed going together, all the pieces are like pre-cut, so everything folds, pretty easy. I didn't have a whole lot of problem with that. The hardest part of the shed part was probably the roof. Because and I'll show some B-roll a little bit later, but as you can see, what you'll see is that the roof, like there's like you have the trusses and like the screws are supposed to line up right with the roof and they're supposed to fit in a certain spot. So that can be a little frustrating because once again you're dealing with plastic, so plastic can bend and shift a little bit, so sometimes you kind of gotta wrestle it to get the plastic to sit right into the frame. So that you can screw it on, because if it's misaligned, then it's not going to line up right, and then you won't be able to screw where the pre-drilled spots for the screws to go into. So that was a little frustrating. I would definitely recommend 2 people with that. But I was able to do it myself. So like if you are by yourself, don't think that you're out of luck, because you can definitely get it done yourself. It just might be a little bit more work. The other hardest part would be just getting the foundation actually level, so really nothing to do with the shed. Getting that level was like tricky because of where I was putting my shed. Like the hill was slightly sloped, so I had to dig into the hill a little bit, make sure that the frame was completely level, make sure that like all like the 4 holes, the spots where my deck block was going to be actually the perimeter was even. So a lot of things like that, a lot of planning involved. But I would say overall it's not impossible to do. I would definitely say it's like more of like an intermediate type of task, not something for a beginner, unless you have previous experience building things. It could be a little bit tricky, but overall I'm happy with the shed. It's holding up pretty good. Like I said, it's only been about a month, but I'm satisfied so far with the build. Pretty solid. It's bone dry in here, so it does keep the rain out. And you also will need to anchor it with some like lag screws, and that will just ensure that it's not going to blow away or anything like that. But yeah, it's pretty sturdy, pretty solid, and as you can see, it fits all my stuff in here. More than enough space. I got lawnmower, weed whacker, shovels, multiple ladders in here, extra sheet of plywood. So yeah, it holds pretty much everything. So definitely would recommend. I got this one from Costco, so I think it was maybe slightly cheaper than if you get like at Home Depot or something like that. So I think it's like around $1,500, which for a size shed I think is a pretty good price. But yeah, pretty happy with it. So if you're thinking about going the route of like a resin or a plastic shed, I highly recommend Lifetime. If you guys have any other questions, you can hit me up in the comments if there's anything you're struggling with, or need any more advice on what you should be thinking about when it comes to building. Let me know in the comments. But hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you guys did like the video. If you did like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you guys have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.